Run. Run away. These words ring in her ears, a sharp contrast to the ghastly sight before her. Her heart yearns to rush towards her father's lifeless form. But she does as she's told. Fueled by panic, she bolts, sprinting into the unknown with nothing left to lose. Fast forward a week and the city is buzzing with the news of the tragic fire. It's all over the media, the headlines scream arson, painting a picture of a calculated act of violence. They talk about the victims, her parents, and the miraculous escape of their daughter, who managed to flee just in time. Her own version of the story, however, doesn't align with the media narrative. She speaks of shadowy figures and her parents' suspicious deaths. But the police dismiss her claims due to lack of concrete evidence, promising to look into it further. They assure her they're doing everything they can, even as they keep her under wraps, hidden from the public eye for her safety. Despite their promises, progress remains slow. Frustration gnaws at her as she awaits updates, only to be met with the same old line about the fire being intentional. In a fit of anger, she kicks away her crutches, instantly regretting the action as pain shoots up her leg. As she's struggling to retrieve them, an unfamiliar face approaches. He seems to know her well. Too well. She masks her surprise, hoping he would just go away. But he moves closer, commenting on how different she is from her father. His words pique her interest. She looks up, curiosity etching lines on her face. Does he know her family? He proceeds to confirm her suspicions, revealing a shared past and her father's association with the mafia. Her heart pounds as he shares the shocking truth. Her father had been betrayed by his own colleagues, resulting in his untimely death. The revelation sparks a burning desire within her. She longs to find out more about the people responsible for her parents' deaths. But he urges her to let it go, assuring her that the organization will handle it. As he makes to leave, she calls after him, pleading to be included in the revenge plot. She falls to her knees, begging for his help in uncovering the truth. The police aren't sharing anything, and the pain of being left in the dark is too much for her to bear. She needs his help, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to get it. In the end, the man can't resist her earnest pleas. He leans in, sharing the name that will change her life forever, No Hyunchul, the big boss of Gumo, and Young-sung, her father's rival. Extending his hand towards her, he offers a pact. Take his hand, become one of Saram's people, but cross them, and her life is forfeit. The name No Hyunchul echoes in her mind, fueling the fires of revenge in her heart. She looks at the extended hand, considering the offer. Meanwhile, news breaks that Eunha, our protagonist, has gone missing. Reports suggest she was last seen with an unidentified man, leaving many to speculate about her whereabouts. Taking the stranger's hand, she steps into a world she never knew existed, a whirlwind of cash, close connections, and, most importantly, opportunities for revenge. She becomes a master of the game, trading what she has for what she desires. Years pass as she maneuvers closer to her ultimate goal, even if it means selling her soul to the powerful men who can help her achieve it. Now, she finds herself sharing a bed with her target, not out of affection, but strategy. This man holds the key to her revenge, and she'll do whatever it takes to unlock it. She doesn't mind the cost, after all, her heart is set on avenging her parents. In the next scene, our leading lady crosses paths with the hunky business tycoon again. This time, the glitz and glamour of Hong Kong serve as their backdrop, and she's dressed to the nines, ready to turn heads. As they chat about work and globe-trotting adventures, his gaze appreciatively roams over her. He doles out compliments, which she takes in her stride. Their conversation flows effortlessly until their glasses run dry. The gentleman offers to refill hers, but she stops him with a flirty remark. As they head out, sparks fly in the backseat of the car as they make out. But Eunha breaks away, pretending to be tipsy and worried about tiring him out. Amidst their playful banter, a minor accident occurs on the busy highway, but it goes unnoticed. The tycoon brushes off her feigned concerns, reassuring her that he'll take care of her. Just as Eunha leans in, her phone buzzes, interrupting the moment. She excuses herself, lying that it's a call from her parents when it's actually her boss instructing her to abort the mission and catch a flight ASAP. After the call, she apologizes and tells him she has to rush home due to her father's sudden illness. But the man isn't pleased. He grabs her, refusing to let her go after she had led him on all evening. Eunha warns him to back off, but he doesn't listen. So, she reaches for her purse, smacking him square in the face, before using her high heel to knock him off balance. And she doesn't forget the driver either, giving him a taste of her purse too. The sudden halt allows Eunha to escape, though she lands roughly on the pavement. But there's no time to waste, she picks herself up and hails a taxi. As she slides into the cab, she throws a stack of cash at the driver, apologizing to a couple who were also eyeing the taxi. She teases the man for his less than gentlemanly behavior, before her ride zooms off into the night. Just 7 hours after her highway escapade, Eunha finds herself back in South Korea, all business again. Right now, she's seated at a conference table, surrounded by her organization's bigwigs. The hot topic? Shin Kyunhyung, a young go-getter pushing 40, who is currently the managing director of GUMO. His meteoric rise to power in just 8 years has raised a few eyebrows, but that's none of their business. Eunha lounges in her chair, cigarette hanging lazily from her fingers, bored out of her mind as they rehash details she already knows. Finally, she cuts through the chatter, telling them bluntly she's had enough of their rambling. Yongpal, the group's informant, huffs at her impatience. But Eunha cuts him off too, saying she didn't pull an all-nighter to be bored to tears with stories that would make even toddlers yawn. Yongpal's temper flares, and he slams his hands on the table, rising to his feet in anger. But Eunha doesn't even blink. She grabs an ashtray and flings it at him, hitting him square in the face. Yongpal lunges at her, but Sungo Hyunnim steps in, his commanding presence stopping Yongpal in his tracks. Mumbling an apology, Yongpal retreats to a corner. Now it's Eunha and Sungo. He pulls out a knife and presses it to her neck, asking if she's refusing her assignment. Eunha denies it, but Sungo isn't convinced. She tries to play it cool, saying she was just trying to get a rise out of Yongpal, who couldn't keep his eyes off her. But Sungo blames her provocative outfit for Yongpal's wandering gaze. To emphasize his point, he slides the knife down her dress. Eunha stands there, letting him have his moment, before she reverts to her playful self. She teases Yongpal, who curses her out, only to have Sungo throw the knife at him. Yongpal wisely chooses that moment to make himself scarce. With Yongpal gone, Sungo leans in close, whispering Eunha's mission to her: get close to Kyunhyun over 6 months, then take him out. Eunha is taken aback by the timeline, but Sungo silences her with a look, leading her into his room for further discussions. In the half-lit room, Sungo sparks up a cigarette, drawing a deep breath of smoke before releasing it slowly from between his lips. Eunha's voice fills the air, her tone laced with frustration as she gripes about the complexity of her upcoming assignment. She questions Sungo, is taking out Shin Kyunhyung really all there is to it? But Sungo cuts her short, explaining the bigger picture. Sungo reveals he's got his sights set on Yongsung's latest venture abroad, a partnership with a pharmaceutical giant, with Shin Kyunhyun slated as their Korean distributor. The company's stocks are predicted to skyrocket in 3 months, and that's precisely when Sungo plans to strike, bringing both the man and the company's fortunes crashing down. Eunha quickly grasps the plan, earning an approving nod from Sungo. He beams at her, calling her his little princess. A smirk tugs at the corners of Eunha's lips at the nickname. She uses the moment to question if this was all she had traveled for or if there was more behind the scenes. Caught off guard by her boldness, Sungo crushes out his cigarette on a nearby sofa, leaving the floor open for Eunha to make her move. Her eyes light up, she's finally getting what she wants, a shot at Shin Kyunhyung. The next day, a striking man sweats it out on a tennis court. He glances at his stopwatch, satisfied with the 45-minute workout. As he cools down, Eunha materializes seemingly from nowhere, praising his skills while subtly implying he must have a lot of steam to blow off. Kyunhyun isn't particularly impressed by her sudden appearance or her observations, but responds nonchalantly, admitting he's got a lot going on, though it's not all work-related. They chat casually for a bit, but the conversation soon takes a flirtier turn as he leans in closer. With Kyunhyun now steering their conversation, Eunha finds herself momentarily lost for words. His confidence and charm have caught her off guard. Seeing that she's at a loss, he coolly picks up his bag and starts to walk away, leaving Eunha to process their exchange. On impulse, she calls out to him and offers herself yes, in that way. Now it's his turn to be taken aback. He quickly dismisses her, claiming he prefers sophisticated women over children. Unfazed, Eunha pushes through the verbal volley until she sees him crack a grin. That's when she knows she's got him intrigued. When he asks for her name, she introduces herself as Lee Haeun, and asks for his, but he remains mysterious. Their banter continues, each one teasing about their anticipated escapades. They part on a light note, each heading their separate ways. The next day, Kyunhyun is back in business mode, rushing through the office elevator with his assistant, talking in the authoritative tone reserved for men of power. His assistant gives him a heads-up about a new secretary filling in for someone on maternity leave. He doesn't pay much mind to it until he spots the child from the tennis court at the front desk, Eunha. Once they're alone in his office, Kyunhyun scrutinizes Eunha, asking how long she had planned their coincidental meeting at the tennis court. She denies any ulterior motives, but he isn't buying it. In his experience, women have often used such tactics to get close to him. Eunha pleads her case, insisting she needs the job and promises to put in her best effort if he could forgive her earlier rudeness. He tells her to look up, giving her a full look before diving into her resume. There is not much to see here until he scrolls down and the next information gets his attention, an accident that occurred 10 years ago. He then comments that she might be overqualified for the job. Eunha is surprised but manages to keep her composure, answering his barrage of questions. That is until he changes the tone, making a pointed remark about her flashy appearance being inappropriate for a secretary. It takes her back to their first encounter when he mentioned his preference for flashy women. Now, standing too close for comfort, he clarifies that he prefers his women flashy in bed, not at work, as they are a distraction. Eunha struggles to keep her focus with him so close. Stammering a promise to tone it down next time, she leaves the door open for whatever Kyunhyun might have in mind next. Still at their office late into the evening, Kyunhyun leans across to Eunha, letting her know she's landed the job. He hands over all the high-tech tools of the trade, showing her the ropes, while expressing his surprise that the organization chose someone as headstrong as her. Eunha can't help but respond with a grin, her excitement about her new mission practically sparkling in her eyes. After the orientation, Kyunhyun shifts gears from business to pleasure, taking a walk down memory lane to their last encounter. He recalls her question about his intense workout and her reaction to his answer. His voice drops lower, confessing his pent-up desires, before making a bold proposition: he wants her in his bed. As he puffs on a cigarette, he lays out the terms of their arrangement. She'd be under constant surveillance, restricted to a specific area, and wouldn't be allowed outside without his permission. The list goes on, growing more intimidating with each puff of smoke. Eunha feels a chill sweep through her. She knows she has to tread carefully or risk losing her position and jeopardizing the entire mission. She's heard of women falling into traps like these, and she has no intention of joining their ranks. She responds firmly, stating that she's here strictly for work and will do her best not to be a burden. Her answer seems to satisfy Kyunhyun. He casually assigns her a new task: investigate a certain Major Kim Min-sik, who he suspects is cheating the company out of profits and might abscond with the company's gains. Eunha quickly formulates a plan to gain Kyunhyun's trust. She promises to dig up all the dirt on the Major before their scheduled meeting in 2 days. Kyunhyun sinks back in his chair, warning her that it will be a challenging, if not impossible, task. But Eunha is resolute, determined to expose the Major's deceit. Seeing her determination, Kyunhyun decides to give her a chance. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and in rushes Chief Cha, Kyunhyun's assistant, looking as though he's seen a phantom. Before he can say a word, Kyunhyun dismisses Eunha, indicating that it's a private matter. As she exits the room, she struggles to keep her mind off Kyunhyun and the risky game she's playing. As she steps out of the office, she catches a snippet of their conversation, something about the president of Gumo arriving soon. Fear or shock, she isn't sure which hits her first. One thing's certain though, her mission just got a whole lot more complicated. But she's ready for the challenge. In the next chapter, we find a young girl basking in the warmth of a sunny garden, her mother's loving presence a comforting constant. Their laughter fills the air, creating a picture of pure, unadulterated joy. Abruptly, the scene takes a grim turn. Eunha bolts upright in bed, drenched in cold sweat. Another nightmare. She pads quietly to the kitchen for a glass of water, hoping to soothe her racing heart. When will these tormenting dreams cease? They're becoming too real, too vivid. Eunha steps out onto the balcony, lighting a cigarette as she immerses herself in memories both bitter and sweet. She recalls her younger self, tending to the garden with her mother, then the horrifying day of the accident when she hid, helplessly screaming in silence from within the closet. It was 10 years ago, a time when she was just a teenager, resenting her parents for their overprotectiveness. She'd wished then for the freedom of an orphan's life, little realizing how soon her wish would come true. Now, she's on a personal mission of revenge. Even if Shin Kyunhyung, her current target, isn't directly linked to her father's demise, his association with young Sung is reason enough for her to bring him down. But first, she needs to win his trust, not by offering herself, but through her skills and cunning. The following day is D-Day for Eunha, a chance to prove her worth to her new boss, Shin Kyunhyung. The meeting room buzzes with anticipation as Director Shin and Mayor Kim Min-sik discuss their potential alliance. Kyunhyun proposes a deal that the mayor can't refuse, or so he thinks. He asks Kim Min-sik to transfer all his related businesses to Gumo Company and lend his support. The mayor, taken aback, wonders if this is some sort of joke. Support Gumo in their illicit operations? Shin, anticipating the mayor's reaction, plays his trump card. He involves the mayor's family, specifically his sons. Earlier that day, Eunha had handed Shin a document containing all the evidence needed to corner the mayor. The file revealed Kim Min-sik's wife's decade-long travels to the Netherlands for cannabis treatments for their epileptic youngest son. Shin admits that although the information is damning, they need more concrete evidence. Eunha doesn't disappoint. She produces another file, this one containing a clear image of Kim Min-sik's elder son trembling in a corner after pilfering cannabis from his younger brother. Impressed, Shin asks Eunha how she gathered such detailed information. With a casual shrug, she replies that she went there herself to uncover it all. Now, back in the meeting room, Director Shin lays out all the incriminating details before the mayor, watching the man turn ashen with fear. As the mayor stammers a defense, Kyunhyun cuts him off, offering him a drink instead. Later, as he reflects on the successful meeting, Kyunhyun appreciates Eunha's invaluable contribution. Without her, he doubts if he could have made a dent in Mayor Kim Min-sik's stubborn demeanor. Yet, he can't shake off a nagging suspicion about keeping Eunha close. He ponders if he's making the right choice. That night, Kyunhyun plays the gentleman card and gives Eunha a lift home. She thanks him as she heads inside her apartment while he lingers in his car, watching her disappear before heading off. As Eunha steps into her place, she's greeted by an unwelcome sight. Young Pal, sprawled across her bed like he owns the place. She snaps at him, asking what on earth he thinks he's doing in her apartment. The nerve of this guy. She tells him to hit the road, but he's not keen on leaving, instead questioning why she switched off the bug that was planted on her. Eunha rummages through her bag, pulls out the tiny device, and tosses it aside like yesterday's news. She explains it's safer if Kyunhyun doesn't find her with it. Young Pal tries to voice his concerns, but Eunha isn't having any of it. She firmly tells him his being there is risky enough and that if he said his piece, then he should skedaddle. Just as she's about to freshen up, her phone rings. It's Sungo. She plops onto the bed, bracing herself for a long chat. She fills him in on the lowdown about her 2-hour powwow with Kim Min-sik and how her intel had been crucial to Kyunhyun. When Sungo asks about the purpose of the meeting, she explains that only the big guns, Director Shin and Chief Cha, are privy to such juicy details, not a mere secretary like her. She rambles on about bits and pieces of information she's collected until she drops the bombshell, Kyunghyun's departure date. It's in 6 weeks, and he's only taking his inner circle along. Sung-go seems satisfied with the info she's provided, but before he hangs up, he asks if she's slept with Kyunghyun yet. She denies it, leaving Sung-go puzzled. After a quick warning about the risks of dealing with Kyunghyun, he ends the call. After the day she's had, Eunha is feeling the stress big time. She glances at Yongpal, still lounging on her bed. "What are you still doing here?" she asks. Without waiting for his response, she starts shedding her clothes right in front of him. His eyes practically pop out of his head, but he doesn't complain. "What are you up to?" he asks, clearly intrigued, but Eunha just smirks. Not long after, Yongpal gets a rude awakening about what Eunha's got in store for him. The guy is freaking out as he tries to fend her off. She's threatening to bite off his stuff. Did he really think he had a shot? As soon as he gets a whiff of her intentions, he bolts out of her place faster than a cat on a hot tin roof. Finally, she can breathe easy and freshen up. Eunha hops into the shower, and once she's done, she goes through her usual routine of checking her phone. Seeing 2 missed calls from Shin Kyunhyung, her heart does a little flip. She dials his number, her mind filled with images of his deep, dark eyes. She snaps out of her reverie when he answers the call. She almost lets her real name slip, but quickly corrects herself before he notices. It's a first for her, and it's surprising. Is she actually getting nervous around him now? As their conversation goes on, Shin gives her occasional pauses that leave her speechless, and Eunha can't help but feel a little special. She asks him if he usually treats his other secretaries the same way, and he replies with a no. He says that although he usually checks up on everyone who works for him, this is the first time he has made a call by himself. Usually, he'd delegate that task to someone else. Before they hang up, Shin apologizes for ever underestimating her skills, and she graciously accepts his apology. After the call ends, Eunha heads to bed, unaware that Shin is outside her apartment, watching her. Meanwhile, back at his own place, Kyunghyun finds a way to unwind, with thoughts of Eunha filling his mind. Once he's done, he starts to reflect on how his life has unfolded. A week ago, he was tipped off about a tail on him, but he didn't think much of it as it's part and parcel of his lifestyle. However, when he bumped into Lee Haeun at the tennis court and then saw her again in his office, her presence started to feel a tad suspicious. It was too much of a coincidence. And when he read about her parents' accident in her file, the penny dropped. Lee Eunha, the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Lee. He was under the impression she was dead, given Sung-go had informed him so. As he pieces together the puzzle, he receives a call from Sickelson Corporation and finds himself on the line with none other than Sung-go. Sung-go knows all about Shin Kyunhyung and has been working with him all along. After Mr. Lee's death, Sung-go took over the reins of Serum Company. But his greed and ambition knew no bounds, and he set his sights on Yongsun Company too. So he sent Kyunghyun undercover to win No Hyungchul's trust and funnel all profits back to Serum, a mission that takes 8 long years to complete. That was his initial assignment. The final task, however, is personal. Once Kyunghyun wraps it up, he can return to Serum. This raises eyebrows because, in all these years, Sung-go has never pressed him to return to the company. Now you're probably wondering what this last mission is. Well, let me fill you in. After Sung-go sent Kyunghyun to spy on Yong-sung, he hired other spies to keep tabs on Kyunghyun, ensuring they didn't live to tell the tale once their mission was done. And guess who's next in line? None other than Lee Eunha. As the night gives way to morning, Kyunghyun bursts out of the elevator in deep conversation with Chief Cha, so engrossed that he breezes past Eunha as if she's part of the office furniture. Ouch. That stings. Eunha's heart aches a little at this unexpected snub. Within the sanctuary of his office, Kyunghyun and Cha dive into the day's agenda, scheduled meetings, checking up on Eunha's passport details, and waiting for Kim Min-sik's reaction to their little blackmail scheme. It all seems to be falling into place perfectly, so Kyunhyun cuts Cha loose before he starts to ramble off topic. Rewinding to last night, Kyunhyun had another call after Sungho's. He shares his security concerns with the person on the other end of the line. Something's not quite right, but he brushes it off until he has concrete proof. Ever since his rise to power, he's been a thorn in Sungho's side, and now Sungho has set the stunning Eunha on him. But Kyunhyun knows Eunha is smart enough to realize that he's too formidable to take down. Plus, he's got a hunch that she's not too fond of the old man either, despite her seductive charade. He's got her figured out, her mission and all, except for why she's yet to make her move. Kyunhyun summons Eunha to his office to update her on some new arrangements. She'll be joining him on some of his international trips. Eunha listens attentively, nodding at all the right places. When he's done, he asks her if there's anything she'd like to add. She flashes a nervous smile and tells him she's happy he's feeling better and assures him she won't meddle with his work. And just like that, she's out of sight. As the day winds down, Kyunhyun offers to give Eunha a lift home. As they're about to leave, they share a brief, intimate moment when she stumbles and he catches her. But unlike in the movies, he doesn't let the moment linger. He steadies her and then strides off, leaving her once again mystified by his actions. The drive home is eerily quiet, punctuated only by the soft patter of rain. This gives Eunha some space to think about her next moves, now that she'll be traveling with Shin Kyunhyung to Shenzhen. She could gather intel to help Sungho's drug business make a more competitive offer than Yongsung, or she could try to swipe some drug samples, but that's riskier. As her worries start to etch themselves onto her face, Kyunhyun glances over and asks if she's okay. He even reaches over to touch her forehead, half-jokingly complaining that people might think he's making his employees work while they're famished. Eunha assures him she'll take care of it if it bothers him so much. He shrugs it off, saying it was just a joke. Seeing this lighter side of him makes Eunha smile. He suddenly seems so normal. And it seems to flip a switch in Kyunhyun because he then invites her out for dinner. It's pouring outside, so Kyunhyun fetches an umbrella and holds it out to Eunha. But she's so taken aback by all that's happening that she can't quite wrap her head around the idea of sharing an umbrella with him. So, she makes a rather silly decision to walk in the rain instead. Kyunhyun glances back to see her grinning sheepishly at him. With a shake of his head and a chuckle, he reels her in under the umbrella. And just like that, Eunha forgets how to breathe. Inside the restaurant, Eunha tries to dry her damp dress, joking about how she still managed to get wet despite sharing an umbrella with Kyunhyun. She instantly regrets her words as Kyunhyun seizes the opportunity to give her a little lecture on behaving professionally when they're together, so as not to give people the wrong impression. He doesn't want people to think she is being kidnapped or held at gunpoint. Eunha just laughs it off, teasing him that he doesn't look like someone who has any experience in kidnapping. Kyunhyun pours himself a drink and starts talking about various shady organizations involved in human trafficking, dropping Saram's name into the mix. Eunha is momentarily taken aback by this revelation but manages to play it cool, steering the conversation towards other organizations that use a hierarchy system similar to gangsters. Kyunhyun admits there are such organizations and leaves her hanging as he mulls over his response. Eunha anxiously anticipates him mentioning a group they both know, but to her relief, he only refers to the police. With a relieved laugh, she quips that she'd pick the gangsters over the police any day, given their incompetence. As their meal arrives, Eunha takes a moment to survey her surroundings. They're in a secluded room within a restaurant, nestled deep in the mountains, an ideal place to hide a body, she muses, especially hers. Unlike usual, Kyunhyun seems unusually relaxed today. He casually asks her why she joined Gumo, to which she gives her standard reply about wanting to achieve a goal. The conversation then drifts back to the first day they met. Kyunhyun mentions how young she was then and that he still remembers her age, because she kept repeating it. He also shares that around her age, he had already taken lives. Eunha looks at him in shock as he casually talks about the downsides of having so many lives on his conscience and whether he ever worries about facing retribution for his actions. Flashing a mischievous grin, Kyunhyun tells her if that were true, he wouldn't be able to keep doing what he does. He adds, almost proudly, that he's quite a shameless character. When she questions why he's being so open with her, he blames it on the booze. Intrigued, Eunha decides she wants to try some of the alcohol too, and asks Kyunhyung to pour her a glass. She takes a sip, but the fiery liquid is too much for her, and she ends up coughing it all out. She's amazed that Kyunhyung has been downing this stuff like it's water ever since they got here. How does he do it? After their meal, Eunha thanks Kyunhyung for the treat. As they're about to go their separate ways, he suggests they take a little walk. She agrees, and during their stroll, Kyunhyung keeps probing her about her time in Korea and how she ended up working at Gumo. He comments that she seems overqualified for her position. As they wander into a more secluded area, Kyunhyung makes a subtle move, just a light touch on her shoulder, but it's enough to make Eunha nervous. Noticing her reaction, he challenges her to speak her mind. Without missing a beat, she tells him exactly what she's thinking. She wants to kiss him. Caught off guard by her boldness, Kyunhyung is far from upset. He pulls her in closer, by the waist. She murmurs something, and that's all it takes for him to make his move. He threads his fingers through her silky hair, gripping it tightly, but just as he's about to seal the deal, he's distracted by a sudden beam of light in the distance. Squinting, they can make out the silhouette of a man on a sports bike, barreling toward them at top speed. Without missing a beat, Kyunhyung whips out a gun from his pocket and takes aim at the biker, then fires. His bullet hits its mark, causing the rider to lose control and topple over, landing face first on the ground. His helmet cracks open, revealing his identity. It's Young Pal. Eunha is so startled, she forgets for a moment that Kyunhyung is armed. But he doesn't hesitate to fire again, this time hitting Young Pal in the arm as he scrambles to safety. Kyunhyung immediately orders Chief Cha to take Eunha away from the scene so he can handle the intruder, but Eunha clings to him, pleading with him not to leave her alone. Kyunhyung is determined to finish what he started, but Eunha's pleas soften him, so he picks her up and carries her away from the chaos. After such an eventful night, Eunha is relieved to be home. She thanks Kyunhyung for dropping her off and he asks why she stopped him from shooting the biker. She admits she's never witnessed an execution before and acted instinctively to prevent him from doing something drastic. However, she's grateful that he protected her and feels safe when he's around. He seems to take her words to heart and wanting to prove himself, he checks her leg for injuries from the earlier fall. Eunha is slightly overwhelmed by all this direct contact with him, but she can't complain when he pulls out a handkerchief to clean her up. It's a new side of him, one that's unexpectedly kind, but Eunha certainly isn't complaining. The moment they reach her doorstep, Eunha offers a sincere thank you to Kyunhyung before disappearing into the comfort of her home. Once inside, she realizes she's got the place all to herself. So, without wasting any time, she starts to peel off her dress. As she does this, her mind wanders back to the evening's events, particularly Yeonpul's unsettling pursuit on his motorbike. She decides it's time to loop in Sungo about the situation, but wants to ensure their conversation remains private. So, clad in her underwear, she tiptoes towards the door to make sure the coast is clear. As she cracks open the door, the first thing that catches her eye is a pair of shoes. Before she can even process what's happening, a figure steps out from the shadows and into her living room. To her utter surprise, she finds herself face to face with none other than Kyunhyung. Eunha is utterly perplexed. How on earth did he get the passcode to her apartment? A whirlwind of questions swirls in her mind, but before she can voice any of them, Kyunhyung silences her with a kiss. Her eyes go wide and her heart races, but she finds herself kissing him back. Encouraged, Kyunhyung scoops her up and carries her to the bedroom. Their simmering romance seems to have hit a sudden boiling point. The intensity of their connection causes Eunha to reflect on her mission. She knows this intimacy is part of the plan, but why does it feel so real? Later, Kyunhyung pulls a slightly sore Eunha to his side and holds her close. They chat about the experience they just shared, with Eunha talking a mile a minute, an adorable habit she falls into whenever she's nervous. And Kyunhyung, well, he has a way of making her jittery. They share light-hearted banter and laughter, much like any couple would until Kyunhyung tells her to get some sleep. As Eunha starts to develop genuine feelings for him, she can't help but worry that her mission might be heading off course. A few days have passed, but the events from that fateful night still play on repeat in Eunha's mind. It wasn't so much about the passionate encounter with Kyunhyung that was bothering her, but rather the unexpected appearance of Yeongpal. In a fit of frustration, she dials him up, giving him a piece of her mind for crashing her date with Kyunhyung on a motorbike. But Yeongpal is not in the mood for a melodrama. He shrugs off her accusations, claiming he was merely adding a dash of excitement to ensure their evening wrapped up on a high note, all under Sungo's directives. Eunha is taken aback. The nerve of that old coot. Why on earth would he command an ambush on her without giving her a heads up? She wonders what could possibly be brewing in his mind to pull such a stunt. Yeongpal elaborates further, explaining that Sungo simply wanted to give Kyunhyung a bit of a scare. But what did he get in return? A bullet wound, albeit not too severe, it still stung. Eunha quickly wraps up the call, informing Yeongpal that she'll be attending the Gumo Foundation anniversary party with Shin Kyunhyung. However, she admits she's clueless about the details since she only found out today. When Yeongpal offers backup, she declines, feeling confident that she has managed to earn a degree of Kyunhyung's trust. Post-call, she removes the chip from her phone, tossing it away while en route to the office, keen on avoiding any suspicious items around Shin. Let's rewind to the aftermath of their encounter 2 nights ago. They both drift off to sleep, but Eunha is the first to stir awake. She scans the room until her eyes land on Kyunhyung's cell phone. She's just about to grab it and copy all his data when Kyunhyung wakes up and questions her. She quickly covers up, saying she's going for a shower. At 3 in the morning? So he scoops her up from the floor and escorts her to the bathroom where they resume where they left off. Fast forward to the present, Eunha finds herself still consumed by thoughts of Shin Kyunhyung as she walks to her desk. She sneaks a peek into his office to see if he's arrived yet, and is rewarded with the sight of his impressive physique impeccably dressed in a sharp suit. Wow, indeed. With only a few hours to spare before the Gumo Foundation's grand anniversary party, Kyunhyung and Eunha find themselves in a high-end boutique. As Kyunhyung casually flips through a fashion magazine, Eunha can't help but question their reason for being there. His answer is simple and straightforward, they're there to shop. Eunha assures him that his current blue suit would fit in perfectly at any party. But Kyunhyung quickly clears up her misunderstanding. They're not shopping for him, they're shopping for her. The news sends a jolt of excitement through Eunha. It's been ages since she had the luxury of shopping without sparing a thought for the price tags. Kyunhyung, amused by her delight, encourages her to pick anything she fancies. In no time, Eunha is sifting through racks of exquisite dresses, each more glamorous than the last. As she browses, her mind drifts back to the incident with Kyunhyung's phone. She silently vows not to repeat such a risky move lest she gets caught. Upon selecting a promising outfit, she tries it on and presents herself to Kyunhyung. He's visibly impressed, complimenting her on the beautiful choice. In response, she gives a playful twirl before dropping the gold robe to the floor, revealing another stunning dress beneath. This one earns her an enthusiastic applause from Kyunhyung. With a blush creeping up her cheeks, she scurries off to find the perfect pair of shoes to match her ensemble. This isn't just about looking good, it's about perfection. She needs everything to be flawless, because the stakes are high. For a decade, she's been waiting for an opportunity like this, and now it's finally within her grasp. The Gumo Foundation anniversary party isn't just a social event, it's her golden ticket to meeting the man at the helm of Yuksung, No Hyungchul. Once Eun has found the perfect dress for the night, she joins Kyunhyung at the checkout counter. He's ready to foot the bill, but not before adding a few more items to their haul. First, he selects a glittering handbag and when she opens it, she discovers an extravagant necklace nestled inside. The sheer amount spent on her within just a few hours leaves her reeling. She can't help but wonder if this splurge has anything to do with their intimate encounter 2 nights ago. Shaking off the thought, she decides to focus on the present. Kyunhyung guides her towards a mirror. allowing her to appreciate the beauty of the necklace as he fastens it around her neck. Eunha is in awe, hardly able to believe that the stunning piece now belongs to her. Kyunhyun reassures her, confirming that it's indeed hers. Despite her delight over the jewelry, Eunha feels somewhat dissatisfied with her makeup. It just doesn't seem to be party-ready. But Kyunhyun seems utterly captivated by her appearance, so perhaps it's not as bad as she thinks. Flustered under his intense gaze, she reminds him of his promise to treat her with respect when she agreed to work with him again. Kyunhyun simply chuckles at this, signaling Chief Cha to pull up his car. For security reasons, they'll be leaving separately. He's always got a tail of people following him after all. They engage in some light-hearted banter before parting ways. Eunha's adorable look has Kyunhyun so smitten that he confesses he wants to kiss her. Her heart skips a beat at his words, but she gives him the green light. Caught up in the moment once again, Kyunhyun sweeps her off to one of the boutique's plush sofas. In the heat of the moment, Kyunhyun makes it clear that he doesn't want to share her with anyone else. From now on, she will be exclusively his. Eunha finds herself at a crossroads, torn between her mission and the unexpected feelings she's developed for Kyunhyun. After their encounter, Eunha and Kyunhyun manage to keep things pretty chill. Eunha quickly dresses up again, contemplating a quick outfit change. But Kyunhyun insists she sticks with her current dress, stating that it's become a part of their shared memory, it'd be odd to ditch it now. As they step out of the boutique, Eunha teases him about his resemblance to Ma Chao, an ancient Chinese general. The joke has them both chuckling, and Kyunhyun realizes he's starting to like this version of Eunha, not the undercover spy playing his secretary, but the real, unfiltered Eunha from a decade ago. The Gumo Foundation anniversary party is in full swing when they arrive. Eunha positions herself strategically, nursing a glass of red wine while keeping an eye out for No Hyunchul. Kyunhyun, sans suit, is also hanging around the periphery. He'd given his jacket to Eunha earlier to ward off the evening chill. He saunters over to Eunha to check in on her. She assures him she's doing fine. But as a high-profile figure, Kyunhyun can't avoid being pulled away by another VIP for some business chatter. Left alone again, Eunha takes this opportunity to excuse herself and scout for information. In another room, she stumbles upon a group of men discussing the recent power shift at Shin's. Their resentment towards Shin's rise to the top is palpable. They reveal that Shin's stellar performance led No Hyunchul to sideline director Lim and promote Shin instead. The gossipy chatter also reveals that No Hyunchul won't be attending the party, his brother will be representing him instead. This changes everything. If No Hyunchul isn't showing up, then Saram's arrival is pointless. With this new information, Eunha hurries back to find Kyunhyun, hoping to regroup and revise their plan. Now in their own little bubble, Eunha admits to Kyunhyun that the party isn't quite what she expected. She'd hoped for more networking with industry bigwigs and chances to showcase her secretarial skills. Kyunhyun, however, encourages her to just relax, enjoy her wine, and have some fun. Eunha subtly broaches the subject of the president's absence, to which Kyunhyun candidly responds. Turns out, No Hyunchul typically shies away from public events due to a past attack by gang members, one of whom was his nephew. He also shares the dramatic story of how Shin Kyunhyun rose to power, having taken a knife for No Hyunchul during the attack. This gets Eunha wondering if it would take a similar life-threatening situation for Kyunhyun to truly trust her. Their chat is cut short by the arrival of Director Cha, who whispers something about Shinjin to Kyunhyun. Whatever it is, it seems urgent, as Kyunhyun grabs his jacket and makes a swift exit. Eunha attempts to follow. After all, she's his secretary, but he instructs her to stay put. From her vantage point, she can tell that Shinjin has something to do with drug development. Spotting a potential goldmine of information, she decides to arrange a private meeting with Kyunhyun to gain access to this data. Once Kyunhyun wraps up with Director Cha, he calls Eunha over to help straighten his tie. It's an important event, and he can't afford to look disheveled. Eunha hesitates, always a little unnerved by his proximity. Finally, standing close enough to touch, she fumbles with the stubborn tie, her nerves getting the best of her. Noticing her struggle, Kyunhyung lands a soft kiss on her cheek to ease her tension. And it works, calming her nerves and allowing her to get the job done. Alone with her thoughts, Eunha's mind races to plot her next move. She knows her mission, gather intel on Shenzhen. But how to go about it, especially with time ticking away fast? Mulling it over, she decides that a bit of stealthy exploration might just do the trick. As if on cue, a waiter glides by with a food trolley, and she discreetly tails him. Meanwhile, Kyunhyun ascends a flight of stairs, flanked by Chief Cha and under watchful cameras, heading for a private business discussion. His face is etched with deep concentration, revealing the gravity of the situation. When Cha comments on his intense focus, Kyunhyun dismisses it with a wave. Eunha peeks out from her hiding spot, scanning the hall, before stepping out. The heavy security presence catches her attention. This isn't your average anniversary party. She's sure something significant is happening here. Having lost sight of the waiter she was trailing, she waits for him to reappear. When he does, she notes that his trolley is empty, suggesting he's been serving several people. Assured she's alone, she slips off her shoes and starts to follow him, hoping to confirm No Hyunchel's absence and extract information about Shenzhen from Shin Kyunhyung. Heart-pounding, Eunha tiptoes down the corridor towards a door marked security. She presses her ear against it, straining to catch the conversation inside. She immediately recognizes Shin Kyunhyun's voice and listens intently. Then another voice chimes in, which sends her reeling in shock. It's none other than Gumoa's president, No Hyunchel. Kneeling to stay hidden, Eunha listens to their conversation, grinning at how easily she's gathering crucial intel. The discussion reveals a trafficking operation. They're planning to export goods from Shenzhen, route them through Hong Kong, and bring them back to Yongsan. The primary cargo? Methamphetamine. They need Kim Min-sik's corporation to smoothen the transportation process and eliminate any roadblocks. Suddenly, the room falls silent, broken only by No Hyunchel's demanding voice. He's telling Shin Kyunhyun that he can't see the girl he came with on the cameras. A cold realization washes over Eunha. She's the girl he's talking about. Heart pounding like a drum, she springs to her feet and bolts, praying she hasn't been spotted. This story is getting intense. 100 comments and we'll drop the part 2 immediately. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao.